Welcome to the Trauma Survivorhood podcast. I'm your host, Sarah, a certified trauma recovery coach with Full Circle Wellspring. You are listening to Between the Seasons. This is a bonus content series while we gear up to season 2 when our regular format will return. Each bonus episode is a very special interview. We've got authors, creators, founders, community advocates, trauma survivors, and all brand new friends of mine. Please enjoy. Good morning. So we're here with Danét Palmer. She is the author of the book Coffee with the Divine, a yummy guide to daily miracles. She's also the host of the Yummy Way podcast. Much of her adult life was spent as a psycho-spiritual mentor and a metaphysical minister, coaching others to live true, authentic lives. But her greatest joy has been being a mom to her 4 remarkable children. She's watched them grow into extraordinary, remarkable adults. Danét faced abuse and adversity with courage, and she lives on a foundation of love, and she's guided by joy. She currently resides in New Mexico with her husband, Lar, and enjoys spending time with her friends and family. Danét, welcome to Trauma Survivorhood podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. Your story is just so extraordinary. And as a trauma survivor, I know you lived years in abusive situations, which means fearful situations. But then you say you faced that fear with courage. You turned that fear somehow into love and into now living with joy. So what does that process look like for you? How did that unfold for you?
Well, my latest book, Baptized by Love, How I Found Present Joy and Never Let It Go, is really a memoir of how this happened. And I'll just kind of bullet point a little bit about how my story went down. But I grew up, I say the first moment I remember of my life, I was afraid. And I grew up in a very dogmatic, authoritative, patriotic kind of life, and I was afraid my whole life. I was always trying to pay the price of admission to be able to suck air on the planet, kind of, and always afraid that I wouldn't measure up, and never felt like I did. And as a result of growing up in a world where accolades or appreciation or love weren't forthcoming from the primary caregiver and my father, the father figure, really, because my mom was, just as afraid as the rest of us, really.
Oh,
but
yeah.
It led to attracting the same kind of male figures in my life, right?
Right.
And my story in my book begins at that critical moment in my life where I couldn't live and I couldn't die, and I'd been addicted to a man who was abusive, and I had that idea that this time I could get it right. I would be that one person that was always there for him, that would make the demon not come alive next time. And I had a situation where my mother needed my help at her custard shop, and I'd never left the kids alone with this guy before or anything like that. But he was like, just go help your mom. We've already put him down to bed. And I was too afraid of him to really not do it. And so I did. And when I came back, just a couple of hours later, I knew something had happened, and he burnt my son's hands.
Yeah.
And there's no place to put something like that. Is one of the things about being abused yourself is that you keep on thinking that that there's some way you can get it right next time, you can make it stop. You still feel like, as powerless as you are, your mind won't let you give up. Right. It tries really hard to the last second to try and help you survive it, and something happens to your children, there's nothing you can do. And I grabbed my kids and went to the emergency room immediately. And I mean, I say in my book, only a mother's courage could have made my legs move and get out the door in the face of this man that I was so afraid of and had succumbed to so many times myself. And they took my children from me. Child services came in. And the only thing I could think of to do to prove that I loved my children was to take my own life. And so I drove over to my coke dealer's house, one of my coping mechanisms at the time.
Yes.
And I knew he had a shotgun under his bed.
Mm.
And I pulled the shotgun out and I tried to pull the trigger, but it wouldn't move. And it was only by the grace of God, really, you know, and I was just like, I mean, that was a miracle. And I just completely crumbled. I was completely broken. And a thought went through my mind to call the House of Hope, which was a treatment center that my sister had been through. I didn't really think I was an alcoholic or a drug addict. You use drugs and alcohol too to cope if you no, and you screwed up everything, you know. I mean,
Right.
that's how I thought at the time.
There's a justification there. Sure. Yeah.
And so, but I took the direction that was kind of just came out of the ether, and I checked myself into treatment. Turned out I did qualify.
Yes.
And that very first morning in the shower there, I had this amazing experience where the water running over my body, I felt like every cell of my body was infused with divine love. And I had the sense that there was something greater than myself that loved me, that in fact was my own DNA, my true DNA, that love was what I was, and that I was meant to be happy in this life. That I deserved to be here, that I didn't have to prove I was worthy, because the very fact that I was being loved, that I was loved, made my worthiness indisputable.
Right.
And it was just a moment of such clarity that nothing else that had ever happened in my life was as real as that moment. And I knew that I would do whatever it took, no matter what, to honor this experience of pure joy, of pure, unqualified love, you know, and that began my journey. And you know what happens is when we make a decision that's indisputable, it's such a critical part for survivors to make the decision that our trauma is not going to define us anymore. That no matter what we've been through in our life, that's not this moment. This moment's fresh and clean and brand new. And it's just each moment is actually like a moment in that shower where we can release ourselves from the burden of identifying ourselves with the traumas that have happened to us. And we don't need to know how it's going to go next. We just have to be open to saying yes to the moment that we're in. And this is what I began to do. And as a result, a mentor came into my life that was really super amazing. Her name's Betty, and she's you can read about her in my book, and everybody always says, oh my God, I wish I could have met Betty, you know.
We all need a Betty.
Right. And just like you want it to go to, I can't tell you the number of people that have said, you know, Danét, you're our Betty, you know, you're my Betty. And this is how we want it to go, because when we have been graced with the clarity of a present moment awareness, of saying yes to life, and of the innate love being the essential essence of who we truly are. We've been graced with that. It comes with this desire to naturally want to give that away. You know, we find ourselves, you know, we see someone caught up in kind of their own bullshit in their head, you know, and we want to go, let's take a breath together here right now. Because there's a lot more to you than the story you're running.
That's right. That's right.
And so I was really lucky to be in this place where just the nature of how things unfolded, and the fact that I paid attention. I was determined every single day. The first second I woke up in the morning, I tuned into that experience of divine love deliberately. And I didn't get out of bed until I had that feeling. And to this day, or 40 years later, I haven't missed an appointment with the divine. And feeling that love needs to sponsor my day. Otherwise, you know, if it's not love, it's not actually real. It's a story in my head. And stories didn't serve me that well.
No.
You know, and stories aren't real. And if it's not happening now, it's not real, because this moment is the only moment we can live in. None of us have ever lived in the past, and we've never lived in the future. You know, the past can serve one thing, and that is as a chance for us to take a look at what happened and forgive ourselves.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Your story is so powerful because you're talking straight about things that Trauma Survivorhood podcast listeners know I fully subscribe to. And it's intoxicating to hear it on the other side of such an abusive, traumatic situation. You hit this rock bottom. And I always like to use the word pivot, right? There has to be a moment where there's just a small shift, just one phone call, just finding one program, finding one mentor, finding that one small thing, or realizing, this isn't gonna work. This isn't the end of it. I can't do this. And just making that small pivot, because this story could have ended so drastically different if that gun had fired, right?
Right.
And so making that small pivot is so important, and it's so beautiful to see on the other side. And before we were recording, you were talking exactly about the victimhood versus survivorhood episode that I did a few weeks ago. And what's magical about that is it sounds like right before that moment with the gun, most of this side of your life was spent in that kind of victimhood, like this is all I get. I'm just doing the best I can. I'm just fumbling through. And this is what I'm always telling my listeners and my clients who I'm doing trauma recovery coaching with. We want to just make that small pivot that then brings up this whole new life. And survivorhood brings you back now to this beautiful, authentic self, which I love that you use that term, because everyone knows that's my term, right? Full circle back to that authentic self. And our trauma identity can only lock us in for so long. Eventually we have to break out, or it's going to take us over. So you broke out, and I love that. I love it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Energy wants to move. Life comes in through our senses, and it's meant to just flow through us. We say yes to it and it flows through. But if something happens where we say no, and oftentimes, innocently enough, obviously with trauma, we say no, but that energy gets trapped inside of us, and it damps down our authentic self. And it just takes, like you said, a pivot moment. And sometimes that can be as simple as, it doesn't feel good inside right now. We just want to feel okay. And, to recognize that, and instead of running away from that, being afraid of that, I call it your yummy stat. So because the yummy way is my signature thing, right?
Yes, that's her signature. Yes.
But we all have a yummy stat inside, and our authentic self feels yummy. We feel like we're aligned with our true selves. We're aligned with the world, with the moment that's coming into us right now. And we feel okay about it. It doesn't have to be, ooh, this is so bitchin', even though a lot of times it is. And the more you do this, the more every single thing is like that, right? But it's enough to say, oh yes, this is it. And if you have that icky feeling inside, it's telling you that you run up against a belief system. You've run up against, let's just call it blocked energy from your trauma, from your identification with your victimhood, your identification. It isn't so much what happens to us. It's how we identify ourselves as a result of it. And that gets trapped inside. So as soon as you feel that icky feeling, you're running up against a story versus the truth. And that's that glitch, that little glitch is just saying, okay, you're in fear instead of love, and love is what's real. So you take a deep breath, you give yourself the love to notice, and maybe you'll go, okay, so what story am I telling myself right now? I'm telling myself I can't get this done, that they're not going to like me if I say this, whatever those things are. And you recognize the identity that you developed during your victim years. And you can say, is it true now?
Right.
Is it true? Am I willing to see this differently?
Yes.
And you just breathe into each one of those. And am I willing to let it go, so that I can see with the clear, fresh eyes of this moment what's really being brought to me right now? And can I give myself a little love for noticing? And can I give myself a little love for being willing to, hey, however it goes, I have continued to suck air every single day. This story that I just can't take anymore. It's not true. I'm 64 years old, and there hasn't been a moment I couldn't deal with. How do I know? I'm still here at 64 years, right? I've dealt with every single one of them. And by the grace of everything beautiful, most of that time has been amazing because I made that pivot.
Beautiful.
You know?
Yeah. Just that little shift.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let
I
me
love
just
it.
talk about where it is in my life right now for a second, just to give a big full spectrum. And it's actually in my epilogue of my book because it was so poignant at the time that I wrote it just last year. But my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney cancer, and you know, had tumor in his brain. That's how we found out, and all of that. And did the whole immunotherapy, but from the minute we found out, because we live the yummy way, we didn't say, oh my God, I can't believe we have cancer. Oh shit, what happened? We didn't even go into some kind of metaphysical storyline, like, well, what did we do wrong? That, you know, is this trapped anger? You know, whatever bullshit. But no, what we said is, okay, so we've got cancer in our life. Welcome. What do we do next? How do we wrap our love around this experience? How do we embrace each moment? It's just cancer. Something's going to happen every day of our lives anyway. It turns out that cancer is an active part of ours. And it also turns out that the last few months ago, we found out that treatment's not going to work for that. So we're going to let cancer take its natural course. Hey, it's what it is, you know? And sure, this is the thing. This moment's the only moment we're living in.
Right.
And it's so rich with presence for us, you know? Yeah. And you know, people say, oh, things like cancer give you that opportunity, but we really have adopted that in 20 years marriage, that this moment's it. We wouldn't waste our time on some kind of holding each other hostage for something that happened. It happened. If it was 5 minutes ago or 20 minutes ago, either it's an opportunity for deeper discussion, enriching our involvement with each other, or it needs to be let go.
Right.
You know? There's
Wow,
always
what
a
a
coming
perspective.
together in the face of love. Always a coming together in the face of love. Love only wants our unity because it is a wholeness that we really live in.
Yeah. And in that, you know, are you able to find the space for the grieving at the same time and allowing that its place, right?
Yeah, right.
Because it's still a sad moment, right? But it doesn't have to define you.
It's a major part of it, you know, and each time we've had some kind of news, you know, like when we first found out, we just held each other, rocked each other, wept the life we thought was going to happen. And, you know, each step of the way, you know, and then noticing where we get caught up in this hope that this is going to be the treatment that does it, you know, and hope can really hurt you in those ways, you know, because it can rob you of the present moment, and just noticing that, walking it back, being in the presence together, and just, you know, at that. And even when we got the news that cancer wasn't going to work anymore, we went out into the waiting room while we were deciding what we were going to do with it, and that treatment wasn't going to work anymore anyway. And we just wept right there in the waiting room, just held each other and loved on each other, and just said, there that goes. And now, you know, they said we want to focus on the quality of life. Well, we've got that in spades. So, and so, you know, and that's what we're doing now, you know, and that's, and so each thing, and, you know, it doesn't matter what comes our way, we're not going to miss it. We're going to feel all the feelings. That's one of the things that is so critical, just to flip us back to the substance of our conversation, is that when we're moving from victimhood to being a survivor or thriver in our lives, it's so crucial to recognize no feelings are bad. Right. No feelings are bad, important. And they're either showing us where we've got fear in the way of letting the energy move through, or that, you know, some way to pay attention, and they're meant to be felt, right? And so whatever they are, and if you give them permission, you know, we're afraid of our feelings because we think they're going to own us, but they're not. There's no possibility. No, there's no possibility, because we are the creators of our lives, you know, and we are one with the creator of life. And therefore, feelings are there meant to enrich our lives.
And I'm thinking of like Buddhist Zen, right? When we talk about non-attachment, right? Is that similar to your spiritual beliefs in that, like just what is, and you're not attached to an outcome. You're just going to do what you can do and move through it in that way. It sounds very similar.
Yes, it absolutely is. And the whole idea is that this moment is the only moment we can live in. And so if we attach to anything, just like if we resist something, that's energy that gets trapped inside, and it interferes with the purity of our experience. You know, and so, you know, I mean, we have a tendency to go, oh, I really liked this, I don't want it to stop, you know, as if life isn't so freaking abundant, you know, constantly. The thing is, when we attach to something or we resist something, we make that world really small because we start assigning rules to what we'll accept in our lives. And it literally is like a different vibration. So there's all of this beauty coming at you, all of these opportunities, but you can't see them because you've got this is as big as your vision. This likes and dislikes is as big as your vision is, and you can't see anything else, you know, and that's a fear-based situation, whether it's being attached to something or if it's
resisting it. Right. That's so true. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I often tell people that if we could just accept, as much as humans, we're so readily able to accept that we cannot change the weather. We go to a baseball game, we bring an umbrella, we bring sunscreen, we bring an extra layer. If it rains, fine. If it gets too dangerous, fine. We go inside. Yeah, maybe we're a little disappointed. We deal with that. If it's a gorgeous day, we're happy, but then we leave the stadium, right? But like, it's weather, so we can't change it. If we attach that same ideology to everything in life, right, as we do to the weather, because it's so easy with the weather. It's the one we literally have zero control. But if people recognize that in all the areas, I think it would just be, I think we would be walking around much happier people. Much more content, at least.
I totally agree. And I use that analogy a lot too, because so often, I mean, how often do you hear people say, oh shit, it's rain today, it's going to ruin my day? As if, is that what you're going to trade your yummy experience on? You know, oh, my hair didn't go the way I wanted. Is that what you're going to, you know? And because it's always up to us, whatever life, and this is the thing, I don't believe there's ever a moment that life isn't bringing a gift.
Yeah.
You know, Einstein said that you can look at life one of two ways, either like everything's a miracle or nothing is.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, one feels yummy, the other feels icky.
Yeah.
You know,
but it's all the same. It's all the same material, right?
Yeah, and that's the really the point of the obvious point of pivot every time for me. Yummy or icky. You know, if it doesn't feel yummy, then I want to take another look and see what I'm blocking, how I'm resisting this present moment, and just let it go.
Yeah, let it all go. I love that. You've written quite a bit about your you spend like several of your first few hours in the morning, right, in your yummy room, which you're here right now with us. What does that look like? What's going on in this yummy room in the morning?
Well, you know, like I said, before I even get out of bed, the first thought that goes through my mind is good morning, love. Thank you for my life. And I just let my body fill up with that sense of love and gratitude. And then as I come into my yummy room, I imagine that I'm stepping into an ocean of divine love, and I feel that warmth. You know, and part of it's imagination, but it definitely works. It's like a neurolinguistic program, you know, where my body gets involved, and I've been doing this for so long. And so I just feel that warmth. It's like stepping into this ocean of divine love. And then I just, you know, I mean, believe me, there were years that I, took Zen meditation, transcendental meditation, you know, rebirthing. I did everything back in the day, you know, became a shaman, became a rebirther, you know, all of that stuff. But it finally got down to that was all ego, really trying to do it right, to have the right experience. And the idea that I have any idea what life wants from me interferes with what it's giving me. And when I finally got that, I just let my mind kind of drop back behind whatever thoughts might be trying to go on in my head, and then just let my awareness seep down into my being. Am I aware? Yes. Am I aware that I'm aware? Yes. And I can feel that, yes, inside of me, that essential essence of who I am. It doesn't really matter what my mind gets up to, you know?
Right.
And it turns out it kind of gives up. after a while because I'm not giving it any attention, you know? And
It's
so,
true.
and then, sometimes it's, an hour that I just kind of lay back there. When I first started doing that, the thing that would bring me out of that kind of blissful state of emptiness, a full emptiness, like
Wow.
totally
Yeah.
complete, totally one, with
Yeah.
no definition of what that means. I'd have a thought, and it would be something like, "Am I ever going to come back? Is this it?
Where did I go?
Yeah. And that would be, bring me back. And then I realized, oh, that's good. And so, for me, I feel really graced because I know that there's this whole experience going on behind the scenes. It has nothing to do with really the body or our thoughts or anything like that. And I exist there. We exist as one there, and so whenever it feels that way, and sometimes it'll be really since I started writing. Matter of fact, why I started writing, I was coming out of one of those, and I had one of those thoughts that doesn't sound exactly like my own voice, that says, put your fingers on a keyboard and write about your experience with A Course in Miracles.
Yeah.
And so I was taking people through A Course in Miracles, which is kind of my theology. I came across it many years ago, and I just started. I pulled up the lessons and started writing, and stories from my life where I didn't even remember since they did them would just flash up. This is how really life is. We think, oh, I've got to remember what happened to me. I got to keep that memory there. If it's going to be useful for someone else, life will bring it to you in a new
it'll
gift.
pop up.
That's right. And so you never have to worry about that, and that something will happen, that I'll come out of that. And I usually do a little writing, or I'll have this idea, oh, I'd like to read in this book or whatever like that. And I just spend some time either writing or reading or both, and do a little yoga, a little. You guys can't see it, but I've got the yoga mat down there. I've got the weights over here by my chair. I got the chin up bar over here. He sometimes has the yoga trapeze on it.
Yes.
And so I've got all these little ways that say, I love you, Danét.
Yeah.
That I participate in, that I say, I love you, life. And I'm so grateful, and
it gets your day started right, for sure.
Right.
I love that you even bring some of the somatics into it, because when you're working so much, right, with the mind, and then you're getting into a spiritual realm, and then you've got to kind of bring your body back into the room, back into the world, right? Because we know that trauma can get trapped in our body. Those icky feelings, like you say, that's just blockages, right? And they generally show up in your body. So stretching them out, working them out, being healthy in your body, and feeling where you're feeling these things in your body, and then moving, which is beautiful. I love that. So you talk the memoir, the Baptized by Love, How I Found Present Joy and Never Let It Go, is like a memoir. What was the inspiration for that? Was it just something that you said, I just have to tell my story? Do you find it really important to share your story for the benefit of others, or is there a mutual benefit there?
Well, I've been sharing my story for so it's pretty much the day that I made that pivot, right? Because one of the things about being introduced to Course in Miracles too, but I was going to went to a 12-step program, is that you tell your story,
Yes.
And so you get over your shame pretty quickly if you want to get better. There's that saying around, well, most healing environments now, that we're only as sick as the secrets we keep. And
that's very true.
And so, but as far as writing a memoir or something like that, when I was writing Coffee, my sister's been writing her memoir for many years, and she's saying, once you're done writing Coffee, people are going to want to hear, because there's all these little clips in there about like who I am today and how I practice my life. They're going to be like, what got her there? And we want to know, and I'm like, right, everybody wants to write a memoir. Their story's so great. I was never going to write a memoir, right? So when Parker and I started the podcast, the MBA podcast, that came about because we were having these amazing conversations. And he was in Oregon at the time, so they were on the phone or on Skype, really. And he goes, we should just press play and start doing a podcast with the conversations, And when he got done with that, I said to Lair, it was like a year and a half into it, and I go, Lair, Parker doesn't want to do the podcast anymore. And then my husband, he goes, I'll do it with you.
Yeah. And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes. I love listening to that.
So anyway, I decided so many kind of like, one of the things that I loved watching unfold was kind of what my philosophies about living the yummy way really were, and having to kind of unfold those on the page and in the podcast. And so I decided to write a book called The Yummy Way, saying yes to what is. And as I was doing the writing on that, and I wrote a lot, I'd say 60, 70,000 words, right? But there was like this voice in the back of my mind as I started telling stories in it. And it was like yesterday saying, honey, get off your high horse.
I love that. Let me take a minute to catch that. Okay, I got it. Yesterday. That's great.
Saying, honey, I have a voice, and it's time you give it to me. And it just humbled me. And I started, I wrote the prologue, the one that, the story that kind of unfolded here of how it came about that I changed my life. And it was such a groovy experience to kind of, as the woman I am today, fully embodied in my own being, and the compassion I have for her. And I feel like it's one thing to do it piece by piece, but to walk through the whole story with her, and how all the decisions that I made, where I could have made another one, I had a good excuse, but instead I faced myself. And I braved the next move, not knowing what would happen, and to give her voice, myself, and watch this whole thing unfold. And it really didn't take that long to write, actually, and to honor Betty and tell the story of her and her whole journey with life and death too. She had leukemia the whole time I worked with her. So, which funny thing how life prepares you for things. And
isn't it? Yeah.
And so it was it really came about first with resistance, right? By saying, I'm never going to write a memoir, and don't tell life what you're going to do and what you're not, because it'll let you know. And then to feel this sweet voice of my younger self, and be able to write it from the wisdom of who I am today was just a really powerful experience. And so I feel like, and I'll just say this to anybody that's listening, all of us have a story. And where I used to say, everybody's got a story. And I do believe that's true. I also believe that all of us have a story. And if someone's in front of you and an idea about your life from your story comes to your mind, it's life saying it's time to share. We don't all need to write a memoir. But if you've had the thought, I think I want to tell my story, and then your other self, the stuck one in there, is saying, no, you shouldn't do that. It's not that great, whatever, like I was, just notice it, and you can breathe right through it. All you have to do is go ahead and do that and put your fingers on the keyboard. I managed to write 2 books that way.
Yes, just start. And it sounds like once you got started too, like you were saying, it didn't take very long. It just kind of poured out of you because your spirit was more ready and you were more accepting that this is what we're doing right now, and probably things came out and you were like, oh yeah, like,
exactly.
Oh, okay, we'll add that. And it's very powerful when it can just pour out of you like that.
And once you're identified with what the difference feels like when you're playing to a story versus being your authentic self, that feels just so yummy. And so you aren't answering to anybody because you don't really care what they think. If it turns out they always like you that way. That's the weird part. I mean, not always, but often the reception's fabulous. We are hungry for authenticity, because we're hungry to let our own authenticity show and to run our lives, right? And so what I noticed when I was writing the memoir is that I've done so much work on myself. I didn't run up against resistance. I'm completely visible. I'm transparent in, somebody was asking me at one of my book signing events when I read the very first part of that prologue, and she says, my God, how are you so candid and so honest and so, and several people who know me start kind of chuckling there, and I'm like, this is the way I live my life, dude. This is the way I live my life. This is
me.
Because nothing that's ever happened to us can define us, but it has formed. It is, and a way to put that is, they are the fires that forge the phoenix we are today.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I wouldn't change a thing.
Right.
No.
Right. I love what you said when you were talking about how people are hungry for that, right? They're hungry for that authenticity. And I think those are the people that are so locked in a fear base, right? That they're afraid to be vulnerable. They're afraid of the shame that might come up. They're afraid to be this true self. So when they see someone walking it, they're like, well, that's actually where I want to go. There's just this block of fear there, so you're a real inspiration and possibly a challenge to people to say, here's all of me. I'm going to be vulnerable. I moved forward from the shame. The shame's not going to hold me back anymore. I'm going to tell my stinking story. You're going to listen and probably like it. And if you don't want to listen and you don't like it, that's fine too. I'm all right with it. I'm sharing it for people who want it and who are hungry. And that inspiration is really, really, really beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I always want to ask a question because my podcast is all about resources, right? On Wellspring Wednesdays, we do internal resources, self-love, compassion, understanding our brain through trauma, that kind of thing. And then Full Circle Fridays, we do external resources, adjunctive services and book recommendations and that kind of thing. What in your life, external or internal or both, have been some of the best resources that have helped you after you made that pivot to where you are today? It sounds like Betty, your mentor, is probably going to be your number one.
I was just going to say that mentorship is such a powerful thing, and I was so graced to be able to pick up that baton myself, and do that. So I think that's a really powerful thing. Also, telling the truth in situations, just tell the truth. And but some of the resources, if you have a hankering for something spiritual, which I did, I feel, and I grew up in a dogmatic religion, and I really threw it out of self-preservation. And so many black marks, and you're already screwed. So I found myself, but I always had this feeling inside, and I think we all do, that there's something greater than us, and even Einstein said that, right? So, it's that there, and there's something that unites us all that's so extremely powerful. And so, but I was led to A Course in Miracles. And at a time in my life when I was looking for something a little deeper, it came into my life, and it's a metaphysical self-help program. But what I loved most about the philosophies, the text is really just gorgeous, but it's also really sophisticated. And the ego can grab a hold of it and tell you you're screwed. But which is why I wrote Coffee with the Divine, because I was able to find a very simple way. It's kind of the yummy way that I interpreted the Course, at Course in Miracles. And so it's a great introduction to A Course in Miracles for people, because it uses not 365 lessons from the Course in just a simple form, like one or two sentences that the lesson is, and then I kind of share how I've used it, right? But I'm also directing people to take a look at that if they're looking for something spiritually minded. If you have addiction, specifically alcoholism or chemical dependency, I think the 12-step movement, Alcoholics Anonymous, is the greatest mental health movement in the history of mankind. And there's a lot of stats to back that up. It gave life to coaching and mentoring programs in a way that we've never seen before, and it changed the face of the psychological world. Really? When you're looking for a mentor or a therapist, or be sure to be the one interviewing them, and if you bring your authentic self, insist that they're bringing theirs, because it's your life. Especially if you've had relational trauma
it really takes some type of healthy, safe relationship to start to change your brain. Oh, the neural pathways are going to get this, that this can be a safe, healthy relationship. And I totally agree. You have to make sure. I did, one of my episodes was the difference between trauma informed care and trauma trained. So always making sure that someone is trauma trained, right? When you go in with meeting them, so that they understand exactly what happened to your brain, which is super important. But most importantly is the authenticity part. And I love that you are interviewing them. And I tell my clients the same thing, because I do a 20-minute free consult. And listen, that's not me interviewing you. That's you deciding whether or not you like my style and you like the things that I have to say. And, whether you've heard me on the podcast or you found me on Facebook or whatever, it's, do you like where I'm at in my journey and my story to help you? Because if not, I'm going to help you find a different coach that's more suitable to your needs, right? It's not about finding me, it's about finding the right person. So I love that you said that. I love that you had Betty. It sounds like that was just so important to your healing. So where can we find more of you? Tell us which book is the newest one coming out. Tell us how we can get in contact with you in case anyone has more questions for you.
Great. Well, probably the best way to find everything out about me is my website, which is theYummyWay.com. Yes. And on there, we've got, a books page, a media page that you can, reach me, but all the social media stuff, which is basically Instagram and Facebook. I tried everything, right? Of course, but you can exhaust yourself all day long on socials. But, yes. And you can join our mailing list, and I have, like how you give away a little freebie. I created the Yummy Way playbook, the Yummy Stat playbook too. So you get kind of, and how I set up my Yummy room and how you can do yours. So you get those for the first few emails if you sign up. And I also have I have a page with the podcast on it too. So you can find everything there. My latest book is Baptized by Love, How I Found Present Joy and Never Let It Go. But my other book's on there too. And you can pick those up on all of the outlets, independent bookstores, as well as Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any of those places. You can find me there, and the audiobooks out too. So
thank you so much for joining us today. Your authenticity, your vulnerability, all of this yumminess that just ekes right off of you. I think we could just sit in Danét's presence for days, because you give that inspiration to people. So I want to thank you for that and that contribution to the trauma survivorhood world, the community that we have together. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's such a joy to be here.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you so much. You take care of yourself. Have a great rest of your yummy day.
You too.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Trauma Survivorhood Between the Seasons bonus content. For more info and show notes, check out the episode guide below. Until next time, be well, survivors.